Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, Michael Randolph's life of peace and routine was shattered when new neighbors, Nicole and Travis Grant, moved in next door. What began as small annoyances quickly spiraled into chaos, a battle over boundaries, respect, and justice that would push Michael to his limits and beyond. Michael Randolph's life in the quiet suburbs was a testament to simplicity and order. Nestled on a tree-lined street, his house was a picture-perfect reflection of mid-century modern design, complete with clean lines, wide windows that invited the sun, and a well-maintained front yard. His spacious backyard, fenced for privacy, was a sanctuary where he could unwind after long days at work. For years, the neighborhood had been a haven of peace, a place where boundaries were respected and small-town charm reigned supreme. Michael's property bordered another private residence, separated by a neatly drawn fence and a narrow access path leading to the street. The previous neighbors had been polite and cooperative, always respecting the shared spaces. Whether it was keeping the pathways clear or trimming overhanging branches, interactions were cordial and solutions easily found. For Michael, this harmony was what made the neighborhood feel like home. However, the idyllic balance began to shift when the Grant family moved into the neighboring house. From the moment Nicole Grant stepped out of her luxury SUV on moving day, Michael felt a subtle, unsettling energy. She exuded a palpable arrogance, her sharp gaze scanning the neighborhood as if assessing what she could claim as her own. Her partner Travis followed closely behind, his silent demeanor and hard-set expression giving him an air of quiet menace. Initially, Michael hoped that first impressions were misleading. He greeted them warmly, offering a casual introduction and a friendly handshake. Nicole's response was a dismissive smile and a clipped "thanks" before she turned her attention elsewhere. Travis nodded briefly, his focus already on unloading boxes from the truck. There was no warmth, no attempt to foster a neighborly bond. The first signs of trouble appeared almost immediately. Within days, Nicole began using Michael's side of the fence as an extension of her own property. Her SUV, too large for her driveway, frequently encroached into his yard. One evening, Michael came home to find her car parked so close to his garage that he had to squeeze past to reach the door. When he politely asked her to move it, she waved him off with a curt, "It's just for now." It wasn't just the parking. Nicole's tone-deaf approach to the neighborhood's quiet culture became evident as she hosted loud gatherings that spilled into the night. Laughter, music, and raised voices disrupted the once tranquil evenings, leaving Michael to clean up discarded cans, cigarette butts, and other trash the following morning. The pristine backyard he once took pride in began to feel like a battleground. Michael was patient, hoping the Grants would adjust to the norms of the neighborhood. But deep down, he couldn't shake the growing unease. Their casual disregard for his space wasn't just inconvenient. It was the beginning of something much darker, a challenge to the boundaries he had worked hard to maintain. Michael's hope that the Grants would adjust quickly faded as their behavior escalated. The line between carelessness and outright disrespect was crossed within weeks of their arrival, and the situation soon spiraled into a series of conflicts that tested Michael's patience and resilience. The first significant incident occurred one weekend afternoon. Michael had planned to spend the day gardening, a peaceful ritual he cherished. As he stepped into his backyard, he found Nicole's SUV parked halfway across his grass, leaving deep tire tracks in the freshly mowed lawn. His side of the yard, which had always been his private retreat, now felt invaded. Nicole was chatting loudly on her phone near her car, completely unbothered by the damage she had caused. Michael approached her, maintaining a calm tone. "Nicole, I need to ask you to keep your car off my property. The lawn's just been reseeded and—" Before he could finish, Nicole interrupted with a dismissive wave. "Oh, don't worry, the grass will grow back. I'll move it in a bit." Her flippant attitude left Michael momentarily stunned. "This isn't just about the grass," he said firmly. "It's my property." Nicole shot him a sharp look, her smile cold. "We're neighbors, Michael, relax. It's not like I'm taking over your house." This comment, both sarcastic and dismissive, left Michael with a bitter taste. He walked away, realizing that any attempt at reasonable discussion with her would be futile. The invasions didn't stop there. Travis, who had previously seemed detached from Nicole's antics, began using Michael's garden hose without asking. One evening, Michael watched from his kitchen window as Travis washed their SUV, leaving the water running across the lawn. By the time Michael stepped outside to address it, Travis was already walking away, casually tossing the hose onto Michael's driveway without even a glance of acknowledgement. "Travis, you can't just use my water without permission," Michael called out. Travis turned, his face a mask of indifference. "You weren't using it," he replied, shrugging. "It's not about whether I was using it," Michael retorted. "It's mine. Ask next time." Travis smirked, his eyes glinting with challenge. "Sure, whatever you say." As frustrating as these smaller incursions were, the tipping point came when Nicole began treating the yard as though it were an extension of her property. She threw loud parties that spilled over into Michael's side of the fence. Her guests parked haphazardly, trampling his flower beds and leaving trash scattered across his lawn. The sound of music and laughter blasted late into the night, drowning out any semblance of peace. Michael tried to address the issue again, knocking on their door the morning after one particularly raucous gathering. Nicole answered, her expression a mix of irritation and amusement. "Look, Nicole," Michael started, struggling to keep his frustration in check. "I've tried being reasonable, but the noise, the mess, the parking, it's too much. I need you to respect my space." Nicole crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe. "We're just living our lives, Michael. If you can't handle a little noise, maybe this neighborhood isn't for you." Michael's jaw tightened. "This isn't about noise, it's about respect." Nicole's smirk widened. "Respect works both ways, doesn't it? Maybe if you weren't so uptight, we'd get along better." That interaction left Michael seething. It was clear that no amount of reasoning would change their behavior. The Grants had no intention of respecting boundaries, and their actions were becoming increasingly deliberate. For the first time, Michael began to consider more drastic measures. The final straw came a few days later. Michael returned home to find Nicole and Travis hosting yet another gathering, this time with a bonfire roaring dangerously close to the shared fence. Sparks flew in the air as guests laughed and drank, paying no attention to the potential fire hazard. When Michael confronted them, Travis laughed outright. "Relax, man. Nothing's gonna burn down." But Michael wasn't laughing. His patience had run out. It was no longer a question of dealing with inconsiderate neighbors. This was a battle for his right to live in peace on his own property. The tension between Michael and the Grants escalated to a breaking point as their behavior grew more invasive and brazen. What began as a series of annoyances soon turned into outright hostility, leaving Michael struggling to maintain control over his own property. Michael's decision to install an electric vehicle charging station on his side of the yard was meant to solve a practical problem, not ignite another battle. Having recently purchased an electric car, he hired a licensed electrician to install the station near his garage. The process was costly and time-consuming, requiring permits and careful planning to ensure compliance with local regulations. Once complete, Michael felt a small sense of triumph, a productive step forward in the midst of the chaos. That triumph was short-lived. Less than a week after the charger was installed, Michael discovered Nicole's Tesla Model Y plugged into his station without permission. His own car, which he had left charging overnight, had been unplugged and moved slightly to the side. At first, Michael was too shocked to react. The sheer audacity of the act left him speechless. The next morning, he confronted Nicole as she sauntered into her yard. "Nicole, I noticed you've been using my charging station. That's private property. You can't just unplug my car and use it without asking." Nicole's eyes flickered with mock surprise. "Oh, that? I thought it was part of the neighborhood. You're making such a big deal out of a little electricity." Michael's frustration boiled over. "It's not about the electricity. I paid for it, and it's connected to my bill. You don't have the right to use it." Nicole rolled her eyes and gave a dismissive wave. "Relax, Michael. You're acting like this is some major crime." Her words echoed in his mind, feeding his growing resentment. Despite his warnings, Nicole and Travis continued to use the charger whenever they pleased. Each time Michael confronted them, they met him with either indifference or outright disdain. Travis in particular seemed to enjoy pushing Michael's buttons. One evening, Michael caught him in the act unplugging Michael's car and connecting his own. When Michael demanded an explanation, Travis smirked and said, "Chill out, it's just a plug. You can wait." Things took a darker turn when Michael began noticing signs of sabotage. His garden hose, previously coiled neatly near the garage, was found slashed one morning. Later, his mailbox was dented as though hit with a blunt object. While he couldn't prove it was the Grants, the timing and escalation were too coincidental to ignore. The final blow came during a particularly heated confrontation. Michael returned home to find his Charger's protective casing pried open, exposing the wiring. Travis stood nearby, a smug grin plastered across his face. "What did you do to my Charger?" Michael demanded, his voice rising. "Fixing it," Travis replied with mock innocence. "Looked like it needed some work." "You're damaging my property," Michael snapped. Travis shrugged. "It's on your bill, isn't it? What's the problem?" Realizing that talking was futile, Michael turned and began documenting everything. He photographed the damaged Charger, noted the dates and times of each incident, and saved video footage from his newly installed security cameras. The Grants, however, didn't seem deterred. If anything, their actions became more defiant. Nicole parked her Tesla closer to Michael's garage, deliberately blocking his car in on multiple occasions. Travis began leaving their trash on Michael's side of the yard as if marking territory. The sheer brazenness of their behavior was infuriating, but it also solidified Michael's resolve. This wasn't just about his property anymore. It was about standing up to bullies who thought they could take whatever they wanted without consequences. It was clear that the Grants had no intention of respecting boundaries or stopping their harassment. Michael realized that he could no longer handle this on his own. It was time to take the fight to the next level. Michael had reached his breaking point. The Grants' escalating behavior left him with no choice but to escalate his response. Armed with weeks of documented evidence, photos, security footage, and records of every incident, he took the step he had been reluctant to consider: filing a lawsuit. The case focused on property damage, theft of electricity, and harassment. It was a bold move, but Michael knew it was the only way to reclaim control of his home and life. The legal notice seemed to catch Nicole and Travis off guard. Michael's lawyer served them papers detailing the charges, and their reaction was predictably explosive. Nicole stormed over to Michael's front door the same evening, pounding furiously. When he answered, her face was a mask of fury. "You think you're going to scare us with your little lawsuit," she snarled. "Good luck proving anything." Michael remained calm, refusing to be baited. "You'll have your chance to defend yourself in court," he said evenly. "Until then, I suggest you stop damaging my property." Nicole stormed off, but the tension in the air was palpable. The weeks leading up to the court date were marked by icy stares and muttered threats from the Grants. But Michael stayed focused. He worked closely with his attorney, compiling an airtight case that left no room for doubt. The courtroom was packed on the day of the hearing. Nicole and Travis arrived with an air of confidence, their lawyer spinning a narrative that painted them as victims of a petty, overzealous neighbor. But their confidence began to crumble as Michael's evidence was presented. The court watched security footage of Travis unplugging Michael's car, images of Nicole's Tesla parked on his lawn, and photos of the damaged Charger and garden. Nicole's attempts to defend herself grew desperate. "He's lying. That Charger was always there. Part of the property when we moved in," she claimed. But Michael's meticulous records, including receipts for the Charger's purchase and installation, proved otherwise. The evidence was overwhelming, and even the Grants' lawyer struggled to counter it. Then came the turning point. Michael's lawyer revealed police reports from previous incidents involving the Grants in other neighborhoods: vandalism, harassment, and disputes over property boundaries. It painted a damning picture of a pattern of entitlement and misconduct. The judge's decision was swift and decisive. Nicole and Travis were found guilty of property damage, theft, and harassment. They were ordered to pay restitution for the damages and legal fees, but the severity of their actions combined with their prior offenses led to harsher consequences. The judge handed down a sentence of several months in jail for both of them, citing their repeated disregard for the law and their neighbors' rights. As the Grants were led away in handcuffs, Nicole shot Michael a venomous glare. "This isn't over," she hissed, but her words rang hollow. For the first time in months, Michael felt a sense of relief. Justice had been served, and the nightmare was finally coming to an end. With the Grants behind bars, the suffocating tension that had plagued Michael's life began to lift. For the first time in months, he could walk into his backyard without the nagging worry of another confrontation. The air felt lighter, the neighborhood quieter. Though their presence lingered in the form of damaged flower beds and a dented fence, Michael knew he had reclaimed his space. The first order of business was repairing the damage. He hired a local landscaping company to restore the lawn and replant the flower beds that Nicole's car had repeatedly destroyed. The Charger, now relocated securely inside his garage, stood as a symbol of his perseverance. Every trace of the Grants' invasions was systematically erased, leaving only the memory of the ordeal behind. The neighborhood responded with quiet solidarity. Neighbors who had watched the drama unfold from the sidelines began stopping by, offering support and encouragement. Some shared their own minor grievances with the Grants, expressing relief that someone had finally stood up to them. Michael appreciated the kindness, even as he reflected on how isolating the experience had been before he decided to take action. Michael also took steps to ensure such violations would never happen again. New, sturdier fences were erected along the property line, and his upgraded security system included cameras covering every inch of the yard. Though he hoped he'd never need the footage again, the presence of these precautions brought him peace of mind. As he sipped coffee on his porch one morning, Michael allowed himself a moment of reflection. The ordeal had been grueling, but it had also taught him the value of standing his ground. It wasn't easy to fight for what was right, especially against people as aggressive and entitled as the Grants. But in the end, he had proven that persistence, patience, and a firm grasp of the law could overcome even the most difficult situations. When the neighboring house went up for sale, Michael watched with cautious optimism as potential buyers toured the property. Eventually, a young couple moved in, their polite greetings and genuine smiles a stark contrast to the turmoil he had endured. For the first time in months, Michael felt at ease, ready to embrace the peace he had fought so hard to restore. The battle was over, and the victory, though hard won, was his. In the quiet weeks that followed, Michael found himself reflecting on the lessons of his ordeal. The Grants had tested not just his patience, but his resolve to defend what was rightfully his. Their entitled behavior had forced him to confront a harsh reality. Some people see kindness and boundaries as weaknesses to exploit, but through persistence, he had turned their overreach into a powerful affirmation of his own strength. The experience reshaped Michael's understanding of conflict. He learned that standing up for oneself often requires more than patience. It demands action, even when it feels daunting. Filing a lawsuit, gathering evidence, and facing the Grants in court had been exhausting, but it also demonstrated the importance of leveraging the law to protect one's rights. As he looked around his restored yard, Michael felt a deep sense of pride. His home was his sanctuary again, a place of peace and safety. The challenges he faced had made him more resilient, more confident in his ability to overcome adversity. Though he would always remember the battle, it was the triumph that defined him now. Life had returned to normal, and with it came a renewed appreciation for the calm he had fought so hard to reclaim.